Hi everybody, welcome to our live event. My name is Brenda K.B. Anderson and I'm a crochet instructor and also crochet designer, and I am very excited to show you guys the project we're going to be working on today. This adorable little Christmas pickle ornament. How cute is he? So I have to tell you the little story behind this little Christmas pickle here. When I was growing up, my best friend's mom had a Christmas pickle on her tree, and I had never heard of this before. But her mom explained that it was kind of like an old world German maybe tradition, or maybe I assumed that because of her family, I don't know. And so I grew up thinking that this was something that had been passed down for generations and generations and went back to Germany and all that sort of stuff. And then when I was working on this live event and working on this project, I thought, I should have a little blurb about exactly where this comes from. And the more research I did about where the Christmas pickle came from, the more confused I got. And there are multiple conflicting stories about what this is inspired by. But also the one that seems to be maybe more people believe now is that some salesmen at some point in the 1800s decided they wanted to sell more pickle ornaments from Germany, because hand-blown or handmade glass ornaments from Germany were popular at the time, but they weren't selling as many of the pickles. So people believe that they were just sort of trying to get people excited to buy the pickles and made up some lore about this old world German tradition. So you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I love this tradition because if you guys are not familiar with this, the parents usually will hide the pickle on the Christmas tree the night before Christmas. And then when the kids get up in the morning, then they can rush to the Christmas tree and try to figure out who can find the green pickle ornament first, because it's green, it blends in with the tree, it makes it a little bit more of a challenge. So it's kind of fun. And if you are the first one to find the pickle, then there's multiple different things. I mean, different families have their own traditions, but sometimes you get an extra present. Sometimes you get to open your presents first. Sometimes you have good luck for the whole year. There's various different, outcomes of whoever finds the pickle, but it's always a fun scramble to find the pickle. It's just kind of a fun activity. So anyway, I wanted to create a crocheted version of this, and I'm very excited to show you guys how to do this. We're going to work through it step by step today. It's going to be really fun. It's a great introduction to using beads in your crochet if you've never done that before. It's very easy. And you'll end up with a cute little adorable pickle ornament. So of course, this is the live event, and I love it when you guys are active in the chat and you say hi. I see that Brad's mom is here. Good morning. Nice to see you again too. I'm glad you're here. If anyone, and Catherine is saying, I missed the story. Okay. Well, I did actually write up what I know about it, just sort of a brief write-up in the pattern download if you want to check that out, but you can always go back and watch the beginning of this. But the gist of it is that maybe this old world German tradition is maybe slightly made up, but you can believe what you want to believe. But in any case, you can always watch the beginning of this live event later if you want to get caught up on that. Okay, let's see. How do you hide the pickle? Catherine wants to know. You just put it on the Christmas tree, and because it's green, it blends in more. It's not like it's like super hidden, but if you have a fairly large tree with lots of colorful ornaments, also those kind of distract your eye, and it is kind of hard to see. This pickle ornament is a little bit larger than the one that I associate with my childhood, which was my best friend's mom's pickle ornament. It was probably about half this size. That was very hard to spot. We had a hard time finding that. But if you are interested in making a smaller pickle ornament, you can always use a lighter weight yarn. So you could use, this one is made with a number 2. It's a sport weight yarn, but you could always go downsize it a little bit and make it with a fingering weight yarn or sock weight yarn. And use a smaller hook to get a little teeny tiny pickle, and that'll make it a really good challenge. All right. And Alfie said that they did this as a kid. Awesome. Yeah, definitely. You guys, let me know if you've heard this pickle legend or if you have the pickle tradition in your family. Definitely let me know in the comments. I'm very curious to know how many people knew about this growing up, and how many people know about it now. So. All right, good morning to Carol also, hi. And let's see, Christine says, I only heard about the Christmas pickle a couple years ago. It sounds so fun. Yes, awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the materials. We already kind of touched on the yarn a little bit. Obviously, you're going to want to find a green yarn, and depending on the color of the kind of, the Christmas tree that you get, you may want to vary that to kind of match either if you have, if you have a fake tree, or if you always get like a blue spruce, you might want to think about making your yarn color a little bit more similar to the kind of tree that you usually have. My sister has a silver tree, so I thought it would be really funny to make her a silver pickle. I haven't done that yet, but that's my little Christmas surprise for her. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so you're going to want to choose your yarn kind of based on whatever tree color you usually have. But really, any kind of green should blend in fairly well for most people's Christmas trees. And this is, like I said before, this is sport weight yarn, so it's a number 2. So if you don't know what that means, it is a lighter weight, a slightly thinner yarn compared to like the most prevalent thickness of yarn that you might find at like a big box store in the United States. Here, the most popular yarn thickness is a worsted weight, or for crochet, I should say, is usually a worsted weight. So that's a number 4. So this is a couple sizes thinner than that. Okay, so you only need like 40 yards. It's not very much, just a small ball of that yarn. Leftovers work great if you happen to have leftovers from another project. I am going to be using a D 3.25 millimeter hook, but you will use whatever size hook that you need to in order to get a pickle that turns out with a nice firm gauge, so when you put the stuffing in, the stuffing doesn't come out through the holes in between your stitches. And then you will also need, of course, some stuffing, just some polyester fiber fill stuffing. If you don't have that, you can always chop up little yarn ends and put them in there. This is such a tiny project. If you don't want to buy a big bag of fiber fill, you can certainly use some yarn that's chopped up, maybe a color that you don't like anymore, something like that. You can stuff it with that. Obviously, we're going to be needing these beads, which I keep talking about. So the beads are, I don't know too much about bead sizing, but I do know that these are called a 6, and then there's a slash, and then a 0. That's the size of the seed bead, if you're looking for that, if you're trying to buy something online. But basically, you just need a bead that's large enough so it has a large enough hole that you can get your yarn through there, because we're going to be stringing these onto the yarn. They're not stitched on later. So that's basically what you're looking for. That's the main reason that I put the size in there, just so that you guys would have an idea about what size to buy. You will also be needing 2 little black safety eyes. These are 6 millimeter safety eyes, and I know that those aren't super easy to find at local craft stores. Craft stores seem to be carrying a lot more safety eyes lately, so maybe you'll find them there, but these are pretty tiny. So I did put a link for where I always order my safety eyes, my favorite place to get safety eyes. There's a link in the download for that, so you can find that if you like. You could also just do a little embroidery. You could do French knots in black embroidery floss there. That would work fine too, or you could use black seed beads, just get a slightly larger bead, and then sew those on instead. The mouth is just made with black embroidery floss. You need just a tiny, tiny amount. And then also you're going to need a little bit of whatever you're going to use as a string on the top of your pickle. So this is just a very thin gold cord that I bought at the fabric store. But you could use something else like twine or something, or even just yarn, because I know you have yarn. So you could definitely do that. All right, let's see. I think that's, and then you're going to need 2 stitch markers also, and then a very short piece of either dental floss or just sewing thread, and that's going to help us get the beads onto the yarn. I do have an alternative method if you don't have those, so stay tuned for that, and I'll explain that in a little bit. I also want to mention, of course, you're going to need your pattern, so you can go ahead and download that. That is a free download. It has all the instructions, all the materials are listed here, exactly what I use, the brand of the yarn, everything is in this download, as well as some process photos of working on the pickle, so that you might find that helpful to have as well. All right, so, okay, let me just get caught up here and see if there's. Oh, okay, so Tammy says we've done this for years. Our pickle is small and our tree is 12 feet. Whoa, yeah, so that would be hard to find. We still do it with our adult kids. The one who finds it gets a gift. Awesome. Little Gray Fishes says, hi from Germany. Never heard of a Christmas pickle before, but it's awfully cute. Yeah, see, that is interesting to me because we always thought that it was a German tradition. But then when I was doing the research here, I found out that that there was like a poll taken for residents of Germany, and most people in Germany had not even heard of it. So here we are all thinking, oh, it's a German tradition. Of course, they must all have pickles on their trees, right? But nope. Okay, Brett's mom says she'd only heard about this in recent years. And Angie Wolgamot says, grandson loves pickles. He would love this. Awesome. All right, thanks you guys so much for being active in the chat. I love that. I love you guys piping in and saying hi and telling me what's going on. If you guys have any other like thoughts or comments or questions about what I'm working on, definitely put that in the chat so that I can answer those during this live event too. So just want to make sure you guys know you can ask questions, because that's the whole reason we do these live events, so that we can have that interaction, and in case you need a little extra help with something or I didn't explain something very well, I want you guys to let me know. Alrighty, so to start out, before we even start crocheting, we are going to add the beads to our yarn. So in order to do that, just ignore these beads here. I don't know if you guys saw those, but we're just going to pretend they're not on here. Here's just your strand of yarn connected to the ball over here. To get them on there, because this is really, it would be really hard to thread this through your bead, because it's fuzzy, you can't get it through that hole. So this is where your dental floss or your little tiny piece of sewing thread will come in very handy. So what you can do is you can lay just a short piece of your thread across the yarn, and then you're going to fold the yarn back. Whoops. Fold the yarn back like that, so they're kind of interlocked in this way. Then there's a couple things you can do. You can line up the two ends of your thread like this, and then if you get the end a little bit wet, you can usually get them to kind of stick together, and that will make it a little bit easier to thread your bead on. Like this, just thread your bead onto the thread, and then you can bring it down. See that folded section of the yarn, and you can just go ahead and pull that on. And I like to leave one bead here just to hold this so that this yarn doesn't slip out of the loop of thread here. So this is going to kind of anchor it, and I always make sure that I have at least one bead on that loop of yarn there, and just to kind of hold it. So if this is driving you crazy to get these two thread ends into your bead, an additional step that you can take is you can just tie your thread around that strand of yarn. Here we go. And you can just tie it in a knot here like this. And it should be, thin enough that this should all just slip through the bead. So then you only have really one end. I don't know if you guys maybe you can see it better on the table, but here's my little end of thread there, and I'm going to just go ahead and put my bead on that thread. I get up to the knot, and I can just kind of pull it right over. So in that way, you just keep putting all of your beads on. If you are planning to put the face on your pickle, like this little guy has a face, that means you need one less bead, because there would normally be a little green bead right in the center of the face, so you can omit that. So there would be 38 beads on your pickle, so you can go ahead and just thread 38 beads onto your yarn strand. If you don't like the look of the face, then you can definitely just there's modifications within the pattern, and I'll kind of go through that as we work through our project, for just putting an extra bead there. So then you will need 39 beads. So you can just thread them all on. Here's all my beads right here, threaded onto my yarn already. And then we can just cut this off. And in case you're wondering, like, ooh, do you really have to thread on all of your beads for your whole project? I just want you to think about, every time, if you're working on something that's larger than this pickle and you have a whole ton of beads and you're just kind of wondering about that, you can put on a bunch of beads, but maybe not all of your beads, because as you work, you have to keep pulling the beads down the strand of yarn to get them out of the way until you actually need them, which is kind of annoying if you have a ton of beads on here. So sometimes people will just thread on part of their beads, and then they'll crochet for a while, and then they will cut their yarn, thread more beads on, and then, you know, add that strand back in like you're joining a new ball of yarn or whatever. For a long time, it didn't occur to me that of course you could do that. So I'm just gonna point it out in case you guys get excited about beaded crochet and you wanna know that for future use. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of push these beads down out of my way so that I can start crocheting. Alrighty, so we have, we're gonna start here with the adjustable loop. So the way that I like to teach that is I will draw a little loop here with the end of my yarn. So this is the end of my yarn here. And then I'm gonna take that loop and flip it over onto the loop that's connected to the ball, like that. And then I'm gonna put my hook underneath that strand of yarn and pull it up. And don't tighten it all the way, but then just take a little chain, just do one chain here, and that kind of anchors your yarn in place. Then I'm going to, you can just start working into the circle if you like. Sometimes, especially for things where I want to pull it tightly and I'm worried about the yarn breaking, if I'm using a thinner yarn or something like that, I will flip this little circle over like this. And then I'll just start crocheting into that circle. And then you have all this, the thickness of 2 strands of yarn here to work into. All right, so now we're going to do 6 single crochets into that center loop there. So insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, that's 1. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, that's 2. We're gonna add 4 more in here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we can pull on our beginning tail and tighten that up. And I just will leave that, actually I'm gonna leave that on the back side of my work and we're gonna weave that in later. Okay, so the next round, and I did not join at the end of the round, I just put 6 single crochets into that loop and tightened it, and that's it. So the next round, we're gonna do 2 single crochets into each stitch across, or stitch around, but we are going to also be placing 3 beads. So to start, we're gonna do 2 single crochets into the very first stitch. So there's 1 and 2. And 2 single crochets into the next stitch. Actually, I'm going to use a stitch marker to mark my first stitch of the round, just so I don't get confused. Okay, so that was the first stitch. We worked 2 stitches into it. Now here's the second stitch. We're also going to work 2 stitches in there, 1 and 2. And then we're going to place a bead. So in your pattern directions, it'll say, you know, 2 single crochets into each of the next 2 stitches, and then there's an abbreviation that says PB, and all that means is place bead. So you're not actually making a stitch, but you're just taking a bead from what you've already threaded on, you're going to slide it along your yarn all the way up to kind of just like the back of your stitch there. And then you're going to make your next stitch. So when you do that, that traps the bead in place. So we're going to insert our hook here and we're going to make 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So 1 and 2. And you may have noticed when we did that, when we trapped that bead in place, it's on the back side of our work here. It's not on the side that we're facing as we are crocheting. So normally when we're crocheting in the round, the side you see, the side you're looking at is going to usually be the right side of your piece. But because the beads land on the back side, that's going to become the right side of our piece. So I'm going to bring my little pickle in here. So when you look at this fabric, you are actually looking at what we normally consider the wrong side of the stitches, and that's just because the beads land that way. The beads will be on the wrong side, so that the wrong side really becomes the right side. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but just know the beads are naturally going to show up on the back of your work, and that is going to be the outside of your pickle. Okay, so we did those 2 stitches. We're going to do 2 stitches in the next stitch, 1 and 2. These are just still single crochets. And then we're going to place a bead, abbreviated PB. We just slide that right up. And then we are going to do 2 stitches into the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and 1, 2. And then we'll place a bead. Okay, so now we have 3 beads that we've placed, 1, 2, 3, and they should be equidistant from each other. And this last bead has not been trapped in place yet, but that's going to happen on our next stitch. So the next row that we do, let me just double check. I think it's just single crochet around. Let me make sure. Okay, so we worked our first round, single crochet, 6 single crochets, the second round, 2 single crochets into each of the next 2 stitches, place bead, and we do that 3 times, 3 beads placed. The round number 3, we single crochet into each stitch around. All right, so that's going to trap this bead in place, and we're just going to make 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So 1, we should have 12 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. There we are. Okay, so we're on round number 4 of the pattern. We're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, and then a single crochet into the next stitch and place a bead. Then we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch and a single crochet into the next stitch. And then that whole section we're going to repeat again. Here, let me just show you where that is here. Round number 4. So we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So 1 and 2. And then we do a single crochet into the next stitch, 1, and now we're going to slide a bead up. And now we're going to basically repeat that, but we're not placing a bead this time. So we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, 1 and 2, and then 1 into the following stitch. Okay? So that little group that we just did, we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, 1, 2, a 1 into the next stitch, and then we place a bead. Then we do 2 single crochets into the next stitch, 1 and 2, and 1 single crochet into the following stitch. And then we do not place a bead. Okay, so we're going to do that one more time. 2 single crochets in the next stitch, 1 single crochet into the following stitch, place a bead, 2 single crochets into the next stitch, and 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then we do not place a bead. Okay, I hope that made sense. Now we're on round number 5, and we're just going to make single crochet into each stitch around. So that's a total, we should have a total of 18 stitches now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So at this point, you should just double check and make sure your fabric is stitching up fairly firmly. When you look at it, you should not be able to see holes in your stitches, because if you do see holes between your stitches, sorry. I mean, yes, if you hold it up to the window or to the light, you might see little pin pricks between your stitches. But right now, when you look through this, you should not be able to see a hole, because that's going to be even more exaggerated when you put the stuffing in. So if you do see holes, then I would start over using a smaller hook. Yeah, and really having it nice and tight is a bonus here. Having that fabric crocheted up at a very tight gauge really helps the shape of the pickle. All right. Who knew I would ever say that sentence? Alicia is saying, good morning from Maryland, and she loves my crochet patterns and tutorials. Awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. We have hidden a pickle ornament in our tree for many years. Awesome. Let's see, Lilia says a Christmas pickle is such a fun idea. Oh, and Cindy's here. Good morning, Cindy. She's working on a Tunisian crochet shawl for the holidays for her mom. Awesome, that sounds so cool. All right, and Corrine loves it too. Okay, awesome. Thanks you guys for popping in and saying hi. And for the compliments, that was very sweet. Okay, so here we have just finished, let's see, round number 4. Let's see, let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let me just double check here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we just finished round number 4. Round number 5, we're going to make a single crochet into each stitch around. Actually, we just finished 5, didn't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we did. We finished round number 5. Sorry, I got a little bit confused there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so we've worked up through round number 5, and now we're on round number 6. So when we do that, we're going to be doing a single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches, and then we place a bead, and we're going to repeat that 3 times. So 1, 2, here I'm going to put my stitch marker in. 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we can place a bead, and then we're going to do that 2 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, 4, 5, 6, and then we place a bead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we place a bead here. All right, I'm going to pull that out. So we just did a round where we placed 3 beads, and now the next round we just single crochet around. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back in, and we haven't increased at all in that last round. We stopped increasing, so we're just going to have 18 stitches around from here on for a very long time in this pickle. So we're just working our way around, putting 1 single crochet into each space here, or each stitch I should say. And so you can see, maybe you guys have noticed this, but I'm letting it kind of cup so that the beads are on the outside as I'm working. So this is, normally when you're crocheting in the round, you're doing it like this. So the side that's closest to you, that would be the right side, what we normally think of as the right side. But because those beads are on the back, I'm letting it kind of cup to the outside. So those beads are all ending up on the outside of my pickle. And I'm kind of looking at this as I make it, and my stitches are on the back side of this little bowl, if that makes sense. So, it can be a little bit tricky to hang on to such tiny little things. But I find that it helps if I just put 1 finger inside there, or like my thumb inside there. All right, so I made it all the way around, and now we're going to be doing round number 8, and that's where we make single crochet into each of the next 3, place a bead, single crochet into each of the next 3, and then we repeat that sequence. So 1, put my stitch marker back in, 2, 3, and we're going to place the bead, and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we repeat that. 1, 2, 3. Place a bead. 1, oops, 1, 2, 3. And the last repeat. 1, 2, 3. We'll place the bead. And then 1, 2, 3. All right. So that sequence of the last 4 rounds that we've done, that is kind of like the main stitch pattern that happens in this pickle. And we would just continue repeating rounds 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we're going to do that 2 more times. So 2 more groups, 2 more repeats of that. And then we'll do another repeat of round 5. And round 5 is just, working 1 stitch into each stitch. No beads are placed there at all. And so once you get to that point, your piece will look like this. Okay, so it's a little taller, and you can see that the beads are kind of spaced pretty evenly. If you notice one's directly on top of the other, that means like maybe you made a mistake and you did a repeat of round 6 twice or something like that. So they should be spread out pretty evenly around your pickle. And then in round number 18, so that would be the next round that we're working on after you do all those repeats, then that is where we're kind of prep for the face. So that's where we leave a bead out as we're working. So round number 18. If you are not planning on putting in the face, then instead of working round 18, you're just going to do a repeat of, round number 6 instead of working round 18 here. But if you are doing a face, then round 18 should look like this. So you'll do 1 single crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then we're going to place a bead. And then we're going to do 6 more stitches and place a bead. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to say hi from Dawn. I haven't seen you on here in a while, and I'm happy that you're here. And it looks like Riley Anik. Good morning from Texas. So glad you're doing amigurumi and beading. Yay! Awesome. Amigurumi is one of my favorite things to do. Alrighty, so I completed round number 18. Round number 19 is just single crocheting in each stitch around. If you are not putting the face in, you'll just single crochet in each stitch around on round number 19. If you are putting the face in, you're still single crocheting into each stitch around, but we're going to place a stitch marker between the 6th and 7th stitches, but 1 row below. So we really want to put it in the row the round that we just did, but then it gets hard to work into. So we're going to do it after we work those stitches. I'll show you what I mean. So we've made 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So those 6 and 7, those are the 2 stitches where we want to put the stitch marker, but we want to do it in the stitches we just worked into, not the stitches we just made. So I'm going to turn this over so we have our stitch marker on the outside, and we're going to place our stitch marker right here around those 2 stitches. Just like that. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, I'm not used to looking at the backs of my stitches, you don't have to get it exactly perfect. Later on, when you put the eyes in, you can poke the eyes in and move them around and get them exactly in the right spot. This is just to help you to know where I put the eyes so that you can, go for a similar placement, or, of course, you can change it up. You're your own crochet boss. You can do what you like. Alrighty, so now we're just going to continue making a single crochet into each stitch to the end of the round. Okay, and that would be round 19 when you get all the way around to the end of the round. Finish up here, and then you at round number 20, you're making a repeat of round number 8, which I've already showed you how to do. That's just placing beads. We've already done that before. And then 21 through 24, you're going to make a repeat of rounds 5 through 8 again. So you're just doing things we already know how to do. We're kind of working into that main stitch pattern of getting all those beads distributed in there. And then after you do that, you can put the safety eyes in place. So let me show you what it looks like after you work those extra rounds, those repeats. So it'll look like this. There's the one, the stitch marker that we placed between stitches 6 and 7 right there. That's where the posts of your stitches, or posts of your safety eyes will go. So we'll put those in now. I have these little 6mm eyes here. If you decided you wanted to make a smaller pickle, like with the fingering weight yarn, a little tiny pickle, then like I said before, you might want to use seed beads. They do make really tiny safety eyes that are even smaller than these 6mm ones. So if you're using them, just make sure that they're really going to stay in place, because the eye that you see might actually pop through your stitch. Hopefully not, but just kind of test them out. You can always do like a little French knot there or something like that. Okay, so this, actually I'll put both eyes in before I put the backings on. So this is where my little eyes will go. That's where I marked it to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just put the backings on. So, whoops. The flat part of the backing should go towards the fabric on the inside, if that makes sense. So that the flat part of the backing, that's what I'm seeing right there. That flat side is going to go right onto the post of my safety eye. I know these are really tiny, and it's probably hard to see this with my fingers in the way. But you can hear it click into place. And here's the second one. There we are. So there's our little eyeballs, little pickle eyes. All right, so after we have placed our safety eyes, we can start stuffing our pickle, and then we can just continue stuffing it as we finish working up our pickle. So I'm going to pull that stitch marker out a little bit so we don't get it lost. I'm going to start stuffing my pickle. If you find this difficult to get your stuffing in there, you can use the eraser end of a pencil. You can, if you have this kind of crochet hook with the ergonomic grip, that also helps for kind of stuffing this little pickle. Probably most people will be able to reach in there with their finger, but just depending on the size of your pickle, the size of your hands, it might be a little bit tricky without using some kind of tool to kind of shove it down in there. And you want this to be firm, fairly firm, but you don't want it so tight that it's going to start distorting your pickle. The other thing right now that I'm wrestling with a little bit is sometimes when you put your stuffing in, it pulls the posts of your safety eyes like this. See how I can push the post, and then it looks like there's a bulge below the eye. You just want to make sure the posts are really going straight into your pickle, so you can kind of just feel for that when you're putting your stuffing into your pickle. And if it gets moved, you just have to kind of move it back into place. Like that one got a little rotated. There we go. That looks cute. All right, so you're gonna be closing up the top of the pickle at this point and also stuffing it as you work. You don't want the stuffing to get in the way, but you do have to keep remembering to stuff the top of the pickle as you close it up. All right, so we've got a couple more rounds left here. We're gonna work number 25 single crochet into each stitch around. So we'll do, we're still on 18 stitches here. 1, 2, I'm gonna place that in here so I don't have to count. Oops. There we are. Can be a little bit awkward doing this step. I probably could take a little bit of the stuffing out for now until I really start to do my decreases and then put them back in. You may have noticed that I still have beads on my yarn. That's because I put a few extra on. I recommend, even if you counted, to just put a couple of extra beads on just in case, just so that you know you're not going to run out. You shouldn't be using more than those 38 or 39 beads, but you know, sometimes we miscount things. All right. Okay, so I'm almost at round number 26. I just have one more stitch to do here. There we are. So we'll start round 26. We're gonna make a decrease and then single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches, and then we're gonna place a bead. So the decrease is a single crochet 2 together. So no invisible decreases here, because that's gonna show a weird line on the outside of your work, because that, you know, remember, this is like usually the wrong side of your work, but it's the right side for this project. So we're just gonna go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the following stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 stitches. So that's gonna count as our first single crochet 2 together. And then we're going to single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to place a bead. There we go. And now we're going to do that again. So single crochet 2 together. There's our decrease. And then we're going to single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we place a bead. And we'll single crochet 2 together, and then single crochet in the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll place a bead right there. Okay, so the next round we're going to do a single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, then we'll do our single crochet 2 together, and then we'll single crochet into the next stitch, and then we'll repeat that whole series. So make sure that bead is pushed up there. So we'll single crochet into 2 stitches, 1 and 2, single crochet 2 together. There's our single crochet 2 together decrease. Then we single crochet into the next stitch, like that. And we're going to repeat that 2 more times. And it's starting to get a little small, so I better put some more stuffing in there. All right, 2 more repeats. So we'll single crochet into 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Then we make our decrease, so that's a single crochet 2 together. There's our single crochet 2 together, and then we single crochet into the next stitch. Then we'll repeat that 1 more time. Sea Wolfpack is saying, a gherkin, what a great idea to make a set of these in different sizes. That would be so cute. All right. One more, let's see, one more repeat here. Right? Yeah. single crochet into each of the next two. 1, 2, 2 together, and single crochet into the next stitch. All right, so there's just a little bit of room in there. I'm going to put just a tiny bit more stuffing in. This is probably the hardest part of this whole pickle, is just closing it up at the top and making sure that you're getting that stuffing all the way in, up to the very top. It just takes a little time. It's not that hard. Just, a little bit of patience. All right. Now the last round, we're just going to single crochet 2 together 6 times, and that's going to leave us with 6 stitches left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if you're finding this last round just really tricky, you could just do a single crochet into each stitch around and then just do the next step, which I'll show you in just a second, pulling it all tight. That would be okay. It would be just fine, I should say, not like okay. But if you're having a lot of trouble getting that last round of decreases in there, that is an option for you as well. All right, so we're just gonna fasten off and pull that through, and then we're going to weave that yarn tail through the last 6 stitches that we made. So I'm just using a yarn needle here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just weave it through just the front loop, which is really secretly the back loop, but just through one loop of each of those stitches to pull them tight together. There we go. And just close that hole in the top. So, and when you cut off this yarn tail, leave it plenty long, because we're actually going to be using this to create that curved shape in the side of the pickle. It just seemed easier to add it after the fact rather than to add any fancy pants shaping while we were crocheting this, which we could have done, but it just seemed a little bit simpler just to add it by stitching it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you can have your pickle curve in any direction you want to. I'm going to make mine curve just like the one in my sample, like the sample in the picture. So I'm going to have a curve in this direction like this. So in order to do that, we're just going to take one little back stitch up here to just kind of anchor our yarn. And we're going to go back in, and we're going to come out on the side of his head, kind of maybe just a little bit above the eyes, maybe about 1/3 of a way down the pickle, about right here. So we're just going to pop out right there on the side of him. And then I'm going to take another little back stitch here to kind of anchor that yarn. So that way when we pull on it right here, it's not going to tighten the strand that came from up here and kind of do weird things. It might do that to it if we didn't do that little back stitch. And I'm going to do just one extra back stitch, just for good measure here. You probably don't need it. And then we're going to weave our needle through. We're trying to make it go through like the thickness of these stitches. So what I mean by that is it's not just going under our fabric, it is like splitting through those stitches. And I'm going to try and go all like to about 2/3 down the pickle. Maybe about right here. Okay, we don't want to see long strands on top, and we want to make sure we're kind of piercing through those stitches. So we're going to come out here. And then when we pull on this, we can kind of shape it with our hand to make it a little shorter on that side, to give it that little curve. Maybe I'll go down just a little bit. I'm going to go down just a tiny bit more here, just to get that curve to come a little further down into the pickle. So when we pull on it, see what happens is it shortens that side of the pickle, compared to the other side, and that's what makes it curl. All right, and then we're going to take a little back stitch here. I'm going to stitch a couple times, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing, so it's not just relying on that one strand. I'm going to come over here about a stitch away or so, and then I'm going to weave my needle back up through these stitches, you know, trying to pierce through those stitches, piercing through that fabric. Okay, so your needle is not going underneath the fabric, between the fabric and the stuffing. It is going, like, literally going through that fabric. And then when we do that, we just pull on it a little to kind of give it that curve, and take a little back stitch here, and I'll do one more just to kind of help it keep its shape. So the goal here is to just shorten that side, but you don't want to have like a bunch of wrinkles in your pickle. I mean, maybe you do. A wrinkly pickle would still be cute. But we're trying to just shorten that side without it looking kind of gathered, you know. That might be a little distracting looking. And then we'll just do a couple of stitches just to make sure that that's going to stay in place. I'm going to come down here with my needle and just do a couple of stitches, and then I'll cut that off. Like that. And then we can take our beginning tail and weave that in. And you might be thinking, why in the world would you leave that on the outside of your pickle? Why don't you just leave it on the inside? Then you don't have to weave that in. I really never quite trust those adjustable loops to stay closed. They have opened on me no matter how I do my adjustable loop. Sometimes they just slide a little bit open, and I don't like that. So I always leave that, even when I'm doing amigurumi, I always leave that adjustable loop yarn tail hanging on the outside, and that way I have access to it later, and I can just weave it into the fabric back and forth a few times, and that's going to keep it from ever opening up. All right, here's our cute little pickle. Now this little pickle just needs a little mouth. All right, so to create the mouth, I am going to anchor my embroidery floss somewhere back here because it's not on the front of the pickle. So I'm just going to kind of take a little stitch basically. Actually, I'm going to take a bigger stitch. So that way I have a longer ways to pull on it before it pops back out. So I'm just gonna, right now I'm just kind of anchoring my embroidery floss. So it's barely sticking out. I'm gonna have it just barely on the inside. And then I'm gonna take some little teeny tiny stitches through the thickness of the fabric. I don't want them to show, but I'm trying to just ahead of time anchor my embroidery floss back here. So I'm just kind of sliding my needle through those stitches. And by the way, I'm using an embroidery needle here. I'm not using a blunt tapestry needle. I find that it's easier to make this face on such, you know, I just don't want to worry about my needle going between the stitches. I want it to pierce through the stitches, and that's going to help me be able to have a little more precision when I'm making this smile. Okay, so I'm going to make a stitch underneath, like one long stitch. It's going to come from just below the eye. Let's see, maybe right here. So that's just below the eye. There we go. And then I'm going to come over here to just below this eye, and I'm going to make kind of a loose stitch. And then I'm going to have my needle come out slightly further down on the face. So maybe about right here, and I'll pull it really slowly so you can see what I'm doing. So I want that black yarn to be underneath my needle when I make this stitch, because as I'm making this loose stitch, I want to be able to catch it just a little further down with that embroidery floss here. And then I'm taking a very tiny stitch around the loose strand of embroidery floss, and I'm going to come out at the back of my pickle. That sunk into my project just a little more than I thought it would, but I'm going to See if I can fix that. There we go. This has got a little bit more of a shy smile. I think I want to go back and fix that just a little bit. You could always cut that strand and start over, but I think I can just add one more little stitch right there and come back in right here. And I think that'll make us smile a little bit less concerned looking. A concerned Christmas pickle. There we go. That looks a little cuter to me. There he is. All right, so then you can just kind of weave this in, weave it back and forth, and definitely I'm piercing through those stitches. I'm not just weaving it back and forth in the fiber fill. It's actually sliding through the thickness of that crocheted fabric there to kind of give it a little traction and keep it in place. All right, and then the last thing is to add our strand of our cord. If anybody has any questions or comments or anything that they'd like to add to the chat, we're just about finished up here. So I'm going to cut off this cord so it's about maybe 10 inches or so. And then I'm going to use my embroidery needle because this is very thin and I can put it through my embroidery needle. But you can also use, maybe I can't put it through. Oh, okay. I'll use a tapestry needle to put my cord through. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to be taking a stitch kind of in the top of my pickle, and you want it to go in and out like this. And then we can tie these little ends together. And I'm gonna leave the let's see, how long do I want my loop? About here maybe. And I'm leaving nice long yarn tails cord tails, they're not yarn, because that way I can bury that into the pickle and we won't have to see those sort of tied strands. So I'm threading them back through my needle and I'm going to just rotate this until that knot pops through to the inside of my pickle like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tuck these yarn ends or cord ends down into my pickle here. Like that. There we go. And then I like, because it just comes from kind of a larger distance away, I like to just tie a little overhand knot here just to kind of bring those two strands together at the top. Nice and close to the top of my little pickle's head. But that's optional. You don't have to do that part if you don't want. And I'm gonna just cut these off. And there he is. Now we have pickle twins. So cute. One's a little more curved than the other, but they still look so adorable. So cute. All right. Okay, it looks like we've got a couple more comments here. Oops, I missed some. Let's see. Oh, Corrine says, my daughter-in-law family does this fun tradition. I'm going to attempt to make this for them. Awesome. They will love it, I'm sure. And Susan says, so cute and easy. Thanks for the great pattern and tutorial. Awesome. Yes, it is actually really easy. And it's, to me, threading all those beads on there, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick. And it seems quicker to me than to sew all the beads onto something, onto your crocheted piece later. So that's one thing that just makes it easier. You kind of do the work ahead of time and then it's just fun times making your pickle. Catherine says, hello, Mr. Christmas Pickle. Hello, Catherine. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining me for this fun tutorial. If anybody is interested, I am going to be doing a live event in about half an hour for the Creative Crochet Corner website. I'm going to be teaching you how to insert a fleece, or how to pattern and insert a fleece lining into a hat. So that's a useful skill to have for these winter times coming up here. So I hope you guys all have a great Christmas and holiday season. I hope you make some Christmas pickles and have some fun this year. All right, bye everybody. Thank you so much.